Oh yeah, it's being recorded. Hello there, I can see people are starting to come into the webinar, so welcome. I will give it a few moments to let people join, as I think people tend to trickle in, and then we'll go and see if we can make a start introducing ourselves and answering questions. So I will spend the next minute talking in circles as people wander in the room, so people don't think it's a silent call. So welcome. I'll introduce myself properly. My name's Chris. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Admissions, and I'm hosting this meeting. The main thing that you're all here to hear from, yes, is the current and former undergraduate students who are here on the call as well. So I think the people coming in as stabilised. I suspect we might get a few more coming in as time goes on if people want to ask questions. So this is going to be your chance, attendees, to ask your questions of the students who are here. So this is your chance to meet the students. So we'll go around and do quick introductions first. I will say that in terms of, just as I haven't said, we'll go around and do introductions, you should see at the bottom that there's a Q&A option. So you'll have the, you may have the ability to click a chat option. I forget off the top of my head what I enabled actually for that. You may have the option to chat to us, to panelists and so on, ask a question, but the best thing to do is to use the Q&A option to ask a question. So if anything we say comes up, or if other questions are sparked by things people have said, then please feel free to ask a further question there, and we'll try and get through those. We are recording this session, so we will try and make that available to you afterwards. If you want to go back and rewatch any of that, that will just be made available to you. Okay, so introductions of who's here, since we've just got an hour. As I said, my name is Chris North. I'm the Director of Recruitment and Admissions, so I'm a member of staff here in the School of Physics and Astronomy at Cardiff University, and I'll just be hosting tonight. And I will go around the students who are here on screen it'll probably seem like a random order, but I'll start off with Margot.
Hi, I'm a year 3 medical physics student, currently, so undergrad, and I'm currently doing my final project as well, which is quite interesting.
Cool, so that's medical physics there. Karis.
Hi there, I'm actually a first year PhD student now, but I did all 4 years of my undergrad masters at Cardiff University as well.
Well, Karis has been through the ringer and come out the other side. So knows all the answers to all the questions. No pressure. Georgia.
Hi, I'm Georgia. I'm in my 4th year of doing my MPhys integrated masters, and I'm also doing my final year project. So I've got lots of answers for like labs and things like that. So enjoy.
Great. Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm in my 4th year as well, doing my master's, and I'm studying physics and astronomy on that course.
Okay, and Quinn. Oh, we can't hear you, Quinn. We can come back to you in a moment if you want. Just a slight technical hitch there, I'm guessing. Try now, Quinn. No, it's not working either. It might be a leave and come back again thing. It should let you in, but we'll see you again shortly. So just while Quinn leaves and comes back again to sort of a technical hitch. So just to confirm, so Sam, you're on physics and astronomy. Georgia, which flavour of physics are you studying again?
So I'm just doing straight physics, but I've begun specialising in kind of quantum physics, and doing very much like theoretical subjects. So
great. Karis, were you physics and astro?
So I actually did straight physics because I wasn't really sure whether I wanted to do physics or like astro when I came in. So I wanted to leave my options open a bit, but I ended up taking a lot of the astro courses and ended up studying astro. I'm doing a PhD in astro now, so very much ended up taking the astro route.
Great. And Margot, you're medical physics.
Yeah.
So we've got the range of courses that we offer here. So if you have any questions about those areas, then please do feel free to ask. So as I said, this is a chance for you as visitors to ask your own questions that you might have, be that about studying in Cardiff, be that about the course content, about what to do, or extracurricular stuff, what people have got to outside of their studies. Obviously, the last 18 months or so has been a little bit curtailed in terms of what people can get up to, but most of the people here have been here for a few years and so can remember the before times, and so can comment on that. Quinn, can we give it another shot? That isn't working. No, sorry. I'll let Quinn figure out their options for audio. It might just be trying to use a different mic. Meanwhile, I'll get started with a question that people often ask. And that's about accommodation. So when you start here at Cardiff, you tend to be allowed accommodation, or assigned accommodation. Sorry, you can get accommodation if you're a firm, insurance, or clearing offer holder. And I wondered if any of you are happy to say something about the types of accommodation that are available. I don't know whether any of you have lived out in. I imagine all of you have lived out in private accommodation, but it's also the private halls that are around that you may know people who've lived in as well. So I saw a couple of nods there. Karis, do you want to start off there?
Yeah, so I can actually talk a bit about the private halls because I actually ended up in private halls in first year. Yeah, there are some really great options if you don't end up in the Cardiff Uni accommodation. I mean, the Cardiff Uni accommodation is a great option. Like most of my friends were in those halls, had a really great time in those halls, and they're a fantastic option. But I actually ended up in the private halls. So there are a lot of other options out there as well if you don't end up in the Cardiff Uni accommodation. So I was in a roving house, which is run by the Student Housing Company, and it's literally like a 5-minute walk from the physics building. So it was really, really convenient for lectures and things in first year. So there are a lot of other options out there as well as the university halls.
I have to remember to unmute myself. I'll probably do that multiple times now. So yeah, thank you. Yeah, so lots of options available. There's as well as the university halls, which are the standard, what might we call university digs. And you said the private accommodation blocks. There's also lots of student housing available, which tends to be used by students in their second year onwards. So anyone want to touch on the kind of things that Sam? Do you want to touch on that kind of thing?
Yeah, I could probably talk about it because I've been through it all, I suppose. I was in student halls in my first year, and then my second and third year I was in private residence, and now my fourth year I'm in a house. So I've sort of seen it all and had a good experience through it all, to be honest. So I suppose it's reassuring to know that no matter where you end up, you're probably still going to have a good time, hopefully. But yeah, student halls, obviously, people worry a bit because you've got to pay attention to bills and that kind of thing. But most people I know don't have a problem with that. As long as you have at least one organised person in your house, then you shouldn't have a problem sorting bills and internet and all that. And I have a spreadsheet where I sort of keep track of all of it. So it's quite easy to stay on top of. But it's, if you find a good group of friends in your first year, I know obviously the kind of typical thing is in first year, you find a group of friends either through student halls or your course, and then second year plus, you move into a house with them. you know, as long as you know the people you're moving in with, you're probably going to have a great time.
And then in terms of, I guess the other aspect is in terms of costs. So what we normally say is we don't know what everyone has spent on accommodation, but for those private housing, so the shared houses with multiple people living together, it's normally somewhere around £300 to £400 a month. Does everyone agree with that kind of price? Okay, I'm getting nods generally. Great. So that's the kind of price we're talking. So that's not too bad in terms of cost. It's certainly cheaper than a lot of other capital cities. Okay. Right. Let's do another question. So let's come on to other things. Well, the course itself. One of the things that's happening this year, of course, is there's a mix of lectures and recorded content, because we're still not quite out of the pandemic situation. We're still trying to be a little bit careful. But is anyone happy to talk about the different types of teaching, the different types of learning that happen? So we've got, you know, the lectures and the labs and the self-motivated learning, and how that split works in terms of managing your own time when you're on a course, or managing your time in general between the types of learning that you do. Anyone want to take that one? Don't all jump at once. Karis, yes.
Yeah, I can take that one. So it really does depend. I mean, firstly, it depends on like which branch of physics you do. So there are different types of labs and things. But typically, so going from first year, the majority of your courses will be sort of lecture-based courses, and then typically you'd have sort of one lab-based module a term in first and second year. I think second year it depends whether you do the astro course or whether you're on the straight course. So the astro people have like an astro lab, and then the straight physics course has the sort of more general labs. And then you get things like computing courses. So in first and second year, there's one compulsory computing module each term, where you do sort of like computing based workshops, and you learn Python. And then you'll have things like we had some modules like synoptic physics, which are sort of more hands-on interactive courses where you're working as a team to sort of solve problems and use the things that you're learning in lectures to solve problems and things. So there's a real sort of range of courses throughout the earlier years. And then obviously as you get into the final years, so third year and then fourth year if you do a master's, you have sort of more extended research projects where you're actually doing sort of more hands-on research, and you are really, you know, answering questions that haven't been answered before. So you get a real range of courses throughout the years.
Right, fair to unmute again. I guess a question for all of you actually in that is, do you have a favourite module that you are studying or have studied? Does anyone have a favourite? Because that might give us a flavour for the different types. It's normally quite a broad range. Quinn, do you want to give us a shot?
Okay, my favourite. First of all, can you hear me this time? Yay. Okay. My favourite was Obstec, which is Observational Techniques in Astronomy, which is a second year astrophysics module which is pretty much the lab that you do for second year astrophysics. Because obviously you have lab in first year that's just normal, you do little experiments, and in second year, if you do the astrophysics lab, it's much more using and taking real data from telescopes and finding out, like, we tracked sunspots, we aged a few galaxies. It's really cool because it feels like you're doing like real science using space.
Real science using space. Yes, Margot.
In second year, I actually had a module which is electricity in the human body. And that's kind of a medical physics. You do a normal lab, but it's worth less credits. And the rest of the credits from electricity in the human body, where half of the course is just lecture based. You learn about electricity and all that. The other half of the course is a lab task where you actually build an ECG machine and you test it on yourself, and you get a printout of the heart rate, and then you analyze that to see how well your machine works, and that's really cool and quite some hands-on stuff. And you've got to hope that you did it right, because if you did it wrong, you might electrocute yourself. So that's also quite interesting.
Or get worried you're dead, right? I mean, that might be the no heartbeat. Anyone else? Sam and Georgia. Sam, do you want to?
Yeah. I think my favorite overall, I've enjoyed pretty much all of my modules that I've done, but I particularly enjoyed cosmology in third year, which was an astronomy module looking at astronomy on a really large scale. So the expansion of the universe and talking about dark matter and that kind of thing. I found that really, really interesting.
Yeah, so that's always a popular course. Georgia, do you think you have a favourite module you want to nominate?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on second year computing labs, because every week you're learning a new skill, and I think it's really helpful for things like when you've got your lab results and you don't want to fit your graphs in Excel anymore, and you can move on to something a bit more accurate, and you can calculate things in graphs. And I'm actually demonstrating that module now, and it's really nice coming back to it and then seeing what people are learning, and what I was doing back then year two.
Great. We had a little bit of bad signal in the middle there, but I think we got the gist of it. So those computing modules, and actually that brings up another question. So I should say, if you're watching and you want to ask questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function to ask questions. The computing is sometimes something people are nervous about when they start. Some people have done computing A-level, for example. Some people are keen coders before they come along, but the majority of people haven't done any of that. So anyone want to touch on their experiences as they came in? Karis, I think you're first with a hand up there. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can definitely talk about this one, because I came in with like absolutely zero computing experience. I'd never done any coding or anything. I'm the kind of person who can like touch a computer and break it. I'm really not good with computers. And I came into the course having no experience at all, and then actually ended up really, really enjoying the Python modules in the first couple of years. And then both my projects in third and in fourth year ended up being quite sort of computing heavy projects, going from no experience at all in first year. My fourth year project was actually a machine learning project. So I went from having no experience at all to doing machine learning in my final year. So I think the computing modules are really great, and you don't need to be worried at all if it's not something you've done before, because it really does take you from the basics, and you'll be really surprised by what you can do at the end of even the first 2 years.
And so what's your PhD topic now? Is that computational in nature?
So there's going to be some computational parts of it. So I'm studying supernovae, and some parts of that will probably be modelling supernovae light curves using the computing techniques that I learned here in undergrad.
Yeah. So you can despite coming in with nothing, as which most people, the majority of people, don't come in with much computing experience. You go out with the ability to start PhDs modelling supernovae and so on. Okay, we've actually got a couple of... Oh, Georgia, yes, do you want to chip in on that?
I just want to say, on the other side of things, I did computer science A-level, so I did kind of come into uni with a bit of experience. But having said that, you won't be bored or unchallenged, because you'll be learning things that you haven't really done before. So it's a nice in-between starting off point.
Yeah, I know Andreas, who runs the first year module, is quite good at giving people who maybe seen some of the stuff before extra problems and extra little challenges to solve. So those who have seen it don't get bored, I guess, and still learn stuff. There's still something for them. Okay, a couple of questions that have come in. I'll actually deal with the first one, the shortest one first. So this is a question that's coming. How big is the department? Now I can give a kind of a semi-factual answer, but I guess from a student's point of view, how big does the department feel? How many people do you see as you're moving around in lectures and so on? Does anyone have anything to say on that, to prevent me just having to quote some numbers of number of people? Sam?
I suppose the answer from a student experience is it feels big enough that there's lots going on, and you can spend 4 years there and still don't really know. You know, there are some rooms that you're like, oh, I never realized this room existed, a bit like Hogwarts, but it still feels cozy at the same time in a way. I don't know, you sort of learn where a lot of the lecturers' offices are. So, you know, when you have office hours for your modules, you can sort of find your way around and speak to different lecturers and that. So definitely the lecturers that you sort of know are all really friendly. So it has a sort of cozy feel to it, even though it feels fairly big at the same time.
Yeah, Margot.
I just want to say it also depends on which of the courses you do, because while you do a lot of classes with everyone, my medical physics specific classes, there's only about 7 of us. So I know everybody who's on medical physics, and that actually has its own advantages, because since it's quite a small course, you get very one-on-one time. An hour lecture with only 7 people, you can get all your questions answered, no issues whatsoever. That will depend on which option you pick. Obviously, that's not the case for astrophysics. So yeah, it depends.
Yeah, it varies year on year. There's typically somewhere around 120-ish students in a given year as the full cohort. But as Margot said, when you get to the later years and you do more optional modules, then that can be a very small cohorts for some of the medical physics options. It varies between a 1/3, 2/3 and a 50-50 split between the physics and the astro side of things. It does vary year on year, depending on I don't know, what's been on TV. I'm not sure what so it's not always clear what drives people towards the physics versus the astro courses, but it does vary year on year. So different people have different experiences there. Okay, on that note, Reese has asked, what's the difference between the astrophysics and the physics courses? So we have the physics, we have astrophysics, and we have physics with astronomy. Is one harder or more advanced than the other, and are either of them more sought after by employers? So on the differences between the physics courses, the physics and the astrophysics courses, does anyone have any thoughts? Quinn, you want to come in on that?
Okay, well, I'm doing the physics with astronomy course, which means that I'm literally bang in the middle of those two options. And the main difference is the optional modules. The plain astrophysics course, you have slightly less optional modules because you have to do the modules that are about space. But the physics, you do have more optional modules, and a lot of your optional modules are also the core modules for astrophysics. So as much as I'm taking a physics with astronomy instead of an astrophysics degree, I have done every single thing that the astrophysicists are supposed to do, just because that's what I've chosen to do. But I wouldn't say that one's harder than the other. You've got the same core modules, and if astrophysics is something you enjoy, then taking those optional modules, or either taking those optional modules or doing those modules as core, you'll enjoy them, so you're more likely to put the effort in.
Yeah, so as Quinn says, the core material for all of them is the same. So all of our degrees, you know, the physics, the astrophysics, the medical physics have the core physics content. So every degree is accredited by the Institute of Physics, and every degree has that core physics content. In terms of harder or more advanced, I guess, as you say, that depends on which options you pick. Which is more sought after by employers? There shouldn't really be a difference. They're all physics degrees. So one thing that you will want to, you'll get to the end of your degree, and you'll have your experience will be the different modules you've picked, the different projects you've picked, and your ability to talk about those at interview, essentially. In terms of the physics with astronomy versus astrophysics, as Quinn said, it's the optional modules that make the difference there. There is a slight difference that there's a professional placement on the physics with astronomy, and there isn't on the astrophysics. But because you can do all the astrophysics modules on the physics with astronomy course, if you're interested in a placement, then that shouldn't be a barrier. And you can change your course. You can change the flavour of physics you're doing. Normally at the start and end of years. Not everyone, something like a third, 10 to 30% of our students change in a given year. Anyone here change flavour of physics they've studied? Sam did. What did you change from to, Sam?
Yeah, I was doing straight astrophysics. And then in my third year, I switched to physics with astronomy. And it was purely because there was a module I wanted to do that I wouldn't be able to do if I was doing astrophysics, and I could do if I was doing physics with astronomy. So you can change. It's not locked in from the very first day. You can change depending on what modules you want to do. And yes, it, like Quinn said, it's not a difficulty thing. It's far more of an interest thing, and what you're interested in, then one's harder than the other.
Yeah, and Margot, were you nodding to say you switched, or have you always been on medical physics from the get-go?
I've always been on medical physics. However, we did have quite a few who started in medical physics who changed to just plain physics afterwards. So I know that's an option. A lot of people have done it.
Yeah. Okay. Two questions on qualifications at the moment. So we've got one coming from Brody, who's doing GCSE at the moment. Looking for advice on A-levels that you did ready for the degree, and what jobs would you be thinking about at the end of your learning? So I guess we can unpack that a little bit. There's another question which has come in from someone that says, are you okay to take physics at university having not done further maths during A-levels, which comes into the A-level choice? So that second one is actually quite a common question. Quick hands up of the people on the panel who did further maths. 3 out of the 5. Okay, so I'll call that 50%.
I did a year of it and dropped out. So
okay. You did AS further maths. Okay. So one question that's useful to ask is how, for those who did the full further maths, how much did you find that benefited you, and is that still a benefit now in your third year, fourth year PhD, or Quinn?
Okay, well, yeah, I took further maths, and I think the only difference was the fact that first year, when you have a maths module in first year, I knew pretty much everything already. A lot of the people who took further maths already knew the bulk of that module, so that module was easier and took a lot less effort than I know that some of the others did, because it's the same content you learn over 2 years for your A-level squished into one semester. That being said, the friends that I've got didn't take further maths. They were exactly the same point of math knowledge as me now. After that first year module, there isn't a gap in knowledge. So if you don't want to take it, you don't have to. That first year module catches you up as much as you need.
And I mean, Georgia, I think you said you didn't take further maths A-level. Is that correct? What was your experience of that?
Yeah, that's right. I didn't take further maths at AS or A-levels, and I didn't do it at GCSE either. So I just done straight maths, and it went through in so much depth in the maths modules that I didn't feel left behind at all. And perhaps people that had done further maths may have forgotten bits as well. So it's useful for everyone going through that like material that's needed later on in the years as well.
I think it's also the maths A levels that you can do are very variable in which modules you pick. So you have the core or the pure, depending on which example you want to think, and the mechanics and the stats. And different people have done different combinations of those as well. So as you say, there's bits people might have forgotten because it's been at least 3 months since you last had to think about it by the time you start a degree.
Yeah.
But also you may have not done statistics at A level, for example. A lot of people don't these days. I mean, the core stuff is always there, but there are various people are missing. So I think that sounds like good advice there. That the further maths will help in that first year, first semester maths module, but after that, you're beyond the further maths anyway. So it doesn't help significantly after that. That's not to say that further maths is a bad able to pick. If you're really interested in maths and you enjoy it, but you should do the A levels you're interested in. That's my advice, at least. So without putting words in anyone's mouths, in terms of the other question, what A levels or advice on A levels we did ready for the degree? So I guess a quick. This is a very small sample, so there's a chance we get very similar answers from people. What A levels did people do before they started their degree here? So if we go round in Georgia.
So I took maths, physics, computer science, and I did chemistry AS level.
Okay, so you had that computing aspect you mentioned earlier as well. Yeah. Quinn?
I did maths, further maths, and physics for the 2 years, and I also did an AS level in psychology.
Okay, psychology a bit different. Sam?
I did maths, further maths, physics, and computer science, all at A level.
Okay. Karis?
Yeah, I did maths, further maths, and physics as well, and then I also did the chemistry AS.
Okay, and finally, Margot.
Pretty predictable. I did maths, physics, and chemistry, and I did a further maths AS.
Yeah, so the maths, physics, chemistry, further maths sort of quartet is quite a common combination of some of those. Our requirement on entry is that it's certainly we need the maths. We do recommend, well, we do expect people to have physics. If people are not doing A-level physics for some reason, normally because their school or college doesn't offer it, then we can discuss that. It is possible. You just need very good maths to come in that situation. It's obviously a bit of an uphill struggle when you sort of, there's a steeper learning curve rather when you start. The third A level, assuming people do 3 A levels, we don't actually really have a preference on. So that's where I would say is do the A level that you're interested in. People come in and find things like history A level or some of those more sort of arts and humanities A levels are really useful for writing. You have to write in a physics degree much more than you do in a physics or maths A level. See a few nods. And actually having some experience of doing that in some of those other A levels can be really useful. The other question that Brody asks as part of this is what jobs you'll be thinking about at the end of your learning. So I mean, Karis, you're still doing a PhD, which is sort of the next step. I guess we start with you. Have you got visions of what to do after that, or are you taking one step at a time?
Yeah, so I mean, I always kind of wanted to stay in academia. That was sort of the goal from the beginning, doing a physics degree. And then during my undergrad, I really, really enjoyed the research projects I did. So that was sort of like, okay, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do. So yeah, I mean, the sort of normal path to get into academia is to do a PhD, and then you do some postdocs, and hopefully then you get, a sort of a permanent position somewhere. So yeah, at the moment I'm doing the PhD with the goal to stay in academia, but there are a lot of options after you do a PhD. You don't have to stay in academia, and that's sort of one of the things I've chatted with my supervisor about, already when I did the interview and in the first couple of weeks, is that going out of a PhD, you absolutely don't have to stay in academia. If you decide you want to go into industry or do something different, there are a lot of options going out of a PhD as well. So you can do a lot of different things with a physics degree.
Certainly can. Does anyone else here have a career that they're sort of in mind, or are people still a little bit undecided? Margot?
Not quite career, but I know that after, so I'm on a bachelor's course, so afterwards I'll be doing a master's, actually in neuroimaging, which is a bit more specialized, but it's something that a lot of imaging techniques are covered in the medical physics degrees. That's quite handy. And afterwards, I would either aim to work in a hospital in an imaging department, or the NHS actually offers something called the Scientist Training Program, which is a paid 3-year course you can become a medical physicist. That is a job. And that's something I could potentially do, is go through that training, which you can apply to that with just a bachelor's, but it's not uncommon to apply with a master's as well. So that's a potential option.
Yeah, that's a very common route for people going into medical physics. And I think I'm right in saying, can you do? People have done that without a medical physics degree, with a straight physics degree, but obviously I've normally done the modules relevant to that as well. So it's worth considering, even for people who are on a physics degree, either switching to medical physics or inquiring about doing that if that's something they really want to do. But you do really need to have done the relevant modules, of course, to do that. And that 3rd-year project will be more relevant if you're on the medical physics degree. Anyone else want to talk about a career that they have in mind, or Sam?
Yeah, I suppose I'd start by saying, throughout my education, I've always taken things one step at a time and never really planned that far ahead. So when I came to university, I had no clue what I was going to do afterwards. I just knew I really liked physics and I enjoyed studying. And that's still kind of the case. I don't really know what I'm going to do. But I know I like coding and computers. And so I've been looking at careers in software engineering, and just looking at things like robotics and cybersecurity. So quite a range of stuff. But yeah, anything that involves programming, coding is something I really enjoy.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of fields that are open to people. So, Brodie, I hope that helps with a little bit with the choice of A-levels. Is that something you're mulling over? Okay. In terms of other questions, we talked a little bit about the research projects. There, we've mentioned them a couple of times. I guess a chance now for people to talk about what they're doing as part of their research projects, because that's a fairly significant part of the final year or two of your degree. So anyone want to step forward and talk about their research project? Quinn, what are you doing?
Okay, so I love my research project. I'm really excited about it. I'm working with Dr. Tim Davies, and we are mapping the mass distribution of galaxies and concentrating on either the black hole at the center or the dark matter on the outside to try to find out the maximum velocity of these parts of the galaxies and find information out about them, which is really exciting and really interesting. And a secondary part of it is to see how we can plot it and fit this data, whether it gives the same results as other people who have also done it in a slightly different way, to see whether it needs to be as complicated as the first people who did it, or whether we can just use slightly simpler methods. But it's been, okay, I'm only a few weeks into it, but the project leaders are really good at giving you the base information. Like, these first few weeks, we've been, like, all of the work we've been doing is to get the base knowledge of what we need to do and what's happening in the galaxy down, so that instead of just going straight into the research without having any background knowledge. So we've got that background basis.
And you mentioned using observations of galaxies. As you say, it's early days. This may not be something that's come up yet. Do you know what data which telescopes you're using data from yet, or is that still to be determined?
Yes, the dark matter data is from LIGO, I think, and the other one is from the Very Large Telescope, I believe.
Okay, so the Very Large Telescope is 8 meter, some of the world's largest telescopes in Chile. So, yeah.
In my little notebook.
Well, so that's real data from big telescopes.
Yeah, VLA, so Very Large
Array. Yeah, so that's a network of radio telescopes in New Mexico. So if anyone's watched Contact, it's a slightly old film. That's a very good book as well. Then that's the telescope that features in there. Margot.
I'm also very excited about my project. I'm working on optimizing nuclear medicine, is what it's called. So there's a thing called a gamma camera, which is used to take photos of multiple different organs. Bones is quite a common one. Certain areas of the brain is also quite common. And I'm working on optimizing that camera, so getting the best image we can possible. And then later on, I'll also be looking at real life patient scans, taken with the camera and looking at how we could improve these scans, what these scans mean, etc. And what's quite exciting about it is that I am working on an actual gamma camera. So I'm going up to the hospital, the UHW hospital, and after hours in the department, we get to put our models on there and just scan whatever we like. We get real results. And as I mentioned, the scans that we're working with are actual, we don't perform them, but we get to analyze actual patient scans as well. So that's very hands-on, quite interesting to see, really. And it's just very developed. It's quite interesting.
Great. So another example, real life data from this time from real life people for those things. Karis.
Yeah, so I've actually done 2 projects now. So I've got 2 projects under my belt. I did one in third year and one in fourth year because I did the integrated masters. And both of mine, I was doing gravitational wave projects. So in my third year, I did a project using LIGO data to look for gravitational waves from core collapse supernovae. So at the moment, they're one of the sources that we think probably produce gravitational waves, but we haven't actually detected any yet. And so that means because we can see supernovae, it means we can do these things called targeted searches, where we know what time the supernovae happens. So we can go and look in the data at the time we know the supernovae happened to see whether we can find any gravitational waves at that time in the data. So my third year project was doing that and didn't find any. But sort of the conclusion from that project was that at the sensitivity that the LIGO instruments are at the moment, we would probably need a supernovae to actually go off in our galaxy to be able to see the gravitational waves, because any sort of extragalactic supernovae probably wouldn't produce strong enough waves for us to see them. And so that was what I found during my third year project. And then my fourth year project, I was using machine learning to see whether we could localize gravitational wave signals, so work out where they're coming from virtually in real time. Because the sort of search techniques that we use at the moment, it can take up to several minutes to produce like a sky position for a gravitational wave signal. And so I was using machine learning techniques to see whether we could localize them much more quickly, which obviously has huge benefits for like follow-up searches. So if you detect a gravitational wave, you can say very quickly, this is where it is on the sky. And then astronomers can go and look to see whether there's sort of a counterpart explosion, for example, with the binary neutron star detection, where we saw the kilanovae.
Great, so some gravitational wave data there as well. So Sam, Georgia, what projects are you on? Sam, are you doing that?
Yeah, I'm doing basically the same as Karis, which is quite funny. So my third year, I worked on supernovae, and now my fourth year, I'm studying gravitational waves, but slightly different because I'm looking at the link between gravitational waves and gamma ray bursts, and using a slightly different technique from Karis to be able to rapidly identify gravitational wave signals based on gamma ray bursts and sort of looking at the link between them. So yeah, quite similar to Karis actually.
Great. And Georgia, you started projects?
Yeah. So my issue is I'm interested in too many things. So I've dabbled a lot throughout my degree. So last year I actually did a medical project where I was looking at MRI scans and enhancing the blood vessels, so as to like diagnose things like dementia.
Oh, I think that's a signal break there. I don't think Georgia's just stopped mid-sentence. I think that's the signal line. Okay, so I think we got an idea of a lot of. Sorry, Georgia, your signal broke up then. So we got to the end of your. You were doing dementia.
That's it, yeah. So like
So that was your-
diagnosing things like that, and it was primarily coding last year, which yeah, it was quite good and got to use all of my previous coding experience. And this year I'm now doing X-ray fluorescence, which is not medical or astro related at all. It's used for elemental analysis, finding out compositions within specimens, just using X-rays, and it's really cool. And I get to go into the lab, which is quite nice.
Yes, to tinker with real life equipment.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. In terms of other things people often ask about, I guess one topic is choosing universities. Now, sort of, well, by definition, the five of you all ended up here in Cardiff. So this is obviously a slightly biased sample in that sense. But does anyone talk about what was affecting their choice, or what factors fed into their choices of university, and maybe why Cardiff met that? Margot?
So I always knew I wanted to do medical physics. There aren't actually that many medical physics courses available. There's about 4 or 5 of them, I think, in the UK. So that narrowed it down a lot. But the thing that really made me pick Cardiff is I knew I had an interest in neuroscience. And Cardiff has Kubrick, which is a brain research centre, and it's one of the biggest in Europe. My personal tutor actually works directly at Kubrick, so I've had a tour there, and you sometimes have project options there as well. So that was a really big deciding factor for me, is this was really unique, and nowhere else had any sort of background like that. So that was really cool for me, specifically who wanted to do neuroscience related things.
Kubrick is very cool. I managed to get a tour around there a couple of years ago myself. It was a very fun place to go. That's the Cardiff University Brain Research Imaging Centre. As you say, just about a mile away from the department. Anyone else on Quinn?
Yeah, so Cardiff Uni is also, like, the astrophysics department is very, very good in like the research science world as well. It's a leading university. It was one of the leading researchers for the Venus life research that came out just into my second year, I can't remember. And that was something that was really important to me, because I always knew that I wanted to do my physics degree and then do a postgrad and then go into research. So the fact that I could work with these lecturers, these people who are doing world-class leading astrophysics, was just something that really, really spoke to me. And also I like the city and the other opportunities of extracurriculars you can do here.
Yeah, extracurricular activities is something that we can touch on as well. Any other thoughts on factors affecting university choice that anyone wants to touch on? Okay, we'll move on to, Quinn. Oh, Sam, is that half a hand?
I'll just quickly add on. Obviously, Margot and Quinn have talked about the academic side of things. Whereas I think for me, obviously, I really enjoyed the academic side of Cardiff, but I think the tiebreaker for me, because I quite enjoyed a lot of the universities I looked at. The tiebreaker for me was definitely the city of Cardiff itself. I just really enjoyed all that was going on. I liked that it has a sort of the more built-up town centre, as well as like the green spaces like Butte Park. and then it's quite close. Obviously, there's Cardiff Bay, so it has a lot going on. And then obviously you can travel in Wales and see the more rural areas. So it just had a real mix of stuff going on that I really, really enjoyed. So that was kind of the main tiebreak for me for choosing university.
I think that extracurricular aspect is something that's worth touching on as well. So, I mean, Sam, since you were just talking about that, what you mentioned, traveling to other places and so on. What kind of things, what kind of activities are you up to outside of studying in Cardiff? Anything you want to highlight as things you do?
Yeah. So I obviously with the COVID pandemic, I wasn't able to do so much. So this year I've kind of actually started up a bunch of stuff. Despite being in my 4th year, I just joined a bunch of societies. So I'm planning on doing table tennis, wild swimming, and surfing. So trying to be a bit adventurous this year now that we're allowed outside, and getting involved as much as I can. But obviously for freshers, one of the most exciting things you can do is go to the Freshers' Fair and find out about all the opportunities and societies that are available. There's so much going on. So no matter what you're interested in or how niche you think your hobby is, there's probably someone here that is on the same wavelength as you. And there's probably, a society you can join that'll really spark your interests.
And my understanding is it's fairly straightforward to set up a society if you want, and that you need enough people to be interested, and then you can do it through the students' union, I think.
Yeah. I'll just add on as well. They also had this year, because a lot of society suffered over the COVID period. Their SU was doing something like Revive a Society, where if you were interested in a society but the COVID pandemic really hit the membership levels, you could quite easily revive a society or get it back going again, even if you hadn't necessarily been part of it, or the numbers had dwindled a bit.
Okay, great. Anything else on extracurricular stuff before we move on? We've just had a question come in as well. So the question is, what is the support in the department like? So I guess this is when you need help, where do you go and what help do you get? So does anyone want to touch on kind of support for stuff with work in general and going to the I guess the office and asking for help? Anyone? Quinn?
Yeah, so a lot of your lecturers are more than happy to help out. You can drop them an email, ask for some clarification. If you miss a lecture, I've emailed lecturers apologising and asking whether I needed to do anything specific to catch up or that sort of thing. I get assigned a tutor in first year who is your tutor for the whole year, whole degree, who I found to be an amazing support both for academia and my general existence at uni. Mine was Haley Gomez, and she's amazing. Helps a lot. The Dave, the disabilities and admin person is amazing as well. He's had a load of emails off of me asking for clarification, and actually Chris is great. If you email him enough, he'll reply and help you fix your problems. Literally everybody in the whole department is like, please help us fix your problems, don't go in silence. My project leader was even today, I was saying I was having some problems, and he was like, just tell me, we'll move the meetings if everyone's as helpful as they can.
Yeah, we certainly try and help people. And there's also, I mean, you mentioned if you miss lectures and so on, the online learning side of things. So obviously the last 18 months there was an awful lot online, but actually online learning has been a fairly big part of, or at least having things hosted online rather has been a fairly big part of learning here for a while. In terms of those online resources and accessing the stuff online, how people, what kind of advice would people have for that kind of thing? You want to chip in on what's available, Margot?
Yeah, so for the online learning stuff, the slides that you get in your lectures are normally put online as well, which is just a tiny thing, but I found it super helpful because I could have my laptop set up, and if the lecturer skipped a slide that I want to spend more time on, I could just on my laptop quickly go on that specific slide, which was really, really helpful for me personally. There's lots of other resources online. They'll normally recommend some books as well, which you can just get from the library if you want to do some extra background reading, all sorts of stuff like that. And yeah, there's lots of different personal support in general. Your tutor's normally a really good point. Mine's lovely. And yeah, as mentioned, there's the disability support as well, and they've been absolutely great. They have a lot of screening services available, which is really good. I was able to get a screening for dyspraxia through them, which was all completely online as well. I didn't have to go in, and that was really useful.
Great, thank you. We've got a few minutes left to go. I can't see any more questions have come in, so now's your chance to ask a question if it comes in. But failing any more questions appearing, I think what would be good to get is advice for someone starting a degree or choosing a degree. What would your bit of advice be for someone in the shoes of someone who's thinking about starting a university degree in most cases, not all, but in most cases, a year's time? So that's a big question to ask at the drop of a hat. So anyone want to take that? Anyone think they've got a piece of advice that they give now? Sam?
Mine's quite funny, actually. I'd say learn to cook, because when I came to uni, I didn't find physics hard. I found cooking hard, and like tidying and doing the washing up. And you get so caught up on the academic side of things that you forget that you're living away from home and you have to cook your own food now and live with other people. So before coming to uni, you have the summer off, cook some dinners. It would be really, really useful. Maybe write a food shop for the week at home, do an example one, because in first year, the most common mistake I see people making is spending way too much on food because they haven't budgeted properly. And I say most people, that absolutely includes me. So yeah, I'd actually say from that side of things, be conscious of that, I guess, as well as the academic side.
My kids are a bit young, but I'm looking forward to them doing a weekly food shop and cooking me dinners. That'd be lovely. Any other bits of advice people like to offer people who are starting university or going to be starting university year, applying for universities and so on? Margot?
It's more of a when you get to university advice, but it's one that I heard a lot and that I didn't think was serious until I actually needed to do it, which is do join societies. It is how you meet people outside of your course, because otherwise I would know like 2 or 3 people really, but most of my friends I've made through these societies, and there's a lot of societies that I went to once and didn't go back, but I still talk to people who I met at that event. So it's not the advice that's constantly given for no reason. Do actually follow it. It is pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's all important. That the university is about much more than just the academic side of things. You're also living here, and you want to meet people and do fun stuff. Okay, we're about at past, which is when we're due to finish. So thank you very much. Unless anyone's got any burning top tips they want to offer to potential students later on, I think we'll finish there. Thank you very much for asking those questions that have come in. I hope we've been able to answer them. If you do have any further questions, then drop us an email. You can contact us at physics-admissions@cardiff.ac.uk, or you can visit the website at cardiff.ac.uk/physics, and you'll see our department's website. So thanks to Margot, Karis, Sam, Georgia, and Quinn. Best of luck to everyone who is studying and thinking about applying, and stay safe, take care, and you never know, maybe see some of you around here in Cardiff in the future. Okay, goodbye.